And we're live with a very exciting session today via Haute Lawyer with 3 great partners that we have speaking with us today. And as we let our viewers join us, Roxana, I want to begin with you. Give us your biggest takeaway from 2020 and how you're applying it to 2021.
So I think for me, the biggest takeaway from 2020 that's going to definitely bleed into 2021 and probably into the future for hopefully a long time is technology and the way that we've been able to implement it in obtaining new clients. You know, this is how we're talking right now, this meeting. I mean, although Zoom existed, it wasn't very popular. It wasn't widely used or acceptable. We're seeing it, you know, in the courts today. We're using it for consultations. Our reach has greatly been expanded, and we're no longer limited to, you know, just clients nearby or a courthouse nearby. We no longer need to make that extra step to meet new people and create larger circles. I think that would be my biggest, you know, takeaway into 2021 and hopefully into the near future. I'm truly enjoying sitting, you know, behind the computer and creating relationships and new clients and building that way. It's just more feasible and more practical.
Thank you very much, Roxana.
Robert,
over to you.
Yes, I would echo everything that Roxana said. I think we've all had to adjust to workplace changes. You know, we have some attorneys that feel more comfortable working remotely at this point and maybe less comfortable visiting in person with clients. So we've made that, you know, that's transition has been more seamless than I thought it would be. I think in terms of the actual practice, we all probably encounter some delays with local governments and entities that we have to deal with that we have to factor into in terms of how we're processing real estate transactions, for instance. But I think the markets here in Florida are exceptionally strong. And while they were, I think there was a pause maybe in the early stage of the pandemic, March, April, and May, it sort of started to pick up after that with local business. And then of course, the onslaught of people from around the country identifying South Florida as the place to be.
Well said. Thank you, Robert. Jeffrey, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, to echo Robert a little bit too is, you know, dealing with delays. So I think the biggest takeaway for some of my clients is being reasonable and kind of playing nice with others in the sandbox. We've had numerous landlords and tenants, both residential and commercial, throughout the country that have had problems paying rent or collecting rent. And the ones that have been most successful in working out deals have been reasonable with a little bit of give and take on both sides versus the parties that have demanded rented full or withheld rent, not just in the leasing context, but with government agencies being shut down, being reasonable on timing for purchases and sales of real estate and accommodating to the other side to give them that extra week or two rather than canceling a sale has led to more successful transactions. So with continued to stay at home, you know, maybe working remotely in the future as delays hopefully reside, but as long as they're still here, parties, if they continue to be reasonable, I think that will be a big item for my practice and clients that bleeds from 2020 into 2021.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. So we're so thrilled to have each one of you here with us today from Haute Lawyer, from Haute Living. Really looking forward to a great hour together talking about, you know, the South Florida, Miami market, the influx that's happening right now in terms of relocation and all of the real estate practices here. So let's go ahead and begin introducing Roxana. Roxana Tejeda, is that the correct pronunciation for your last name?
Tejeda.
Born and raised in Miami, Roxana graduated from St. Thomas University's joint degree program with her Juris Doctorate and MS, and was admitted to practice law in Florida in 2011. She founded Tejeda Law Group in 2015. Roxana has closed over 100 million in commercial and residential transactions. Prior to opening her own firm, Roxana worked with the town of Miami Lakes in drafting their procurement contracts and town resolutions. Welcome, Roxana.
Thank you, April.
Robert. Mr. Robert Elias leads one of the premier transactional boutique law firms in South Florida. The Elias Law Firm, PLLC, specializes in real estate, commercial and residential, corporate, estate planning, probate, asset protection, and banking lender representation throughout Florida. Mr. Elias maintains an AV permanent lawyer rating from Martindale Hubbell, the highest legal peer rating from expertise, experience, and integrity, and for overall professional excellence. Mr. Elias was also named to the exclusive list of South Florida's top-rated lawyers by American Lawyer Media, having completed nearly $2 billion in transactions. Robert, thanks so much for being here with us.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Also a great partner of Haute Lawyer. Last but not least, Jeffrey Love, partner with the firm Gibbs, Gideon, Locker, Turner, Sennett, and Winbrot LLP. His practice encompasses all facets of real estate transactions, including drafting and negotiating purchase, sale, syndication, and financing transactions in connection with commercial, industrial, and residential assets. Mr. Love has extensive experience, including originations, modifications, note purchase agreements, and other finance-related transactions from structuring through loan closing. He is a licensed real estate broker in the state of California. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for being here with us today.
Happy to do it.
All right. Roxana, opening up together with you, approximately how much does someone with a $200,000 a year salary pay in taxes in New York compared to Florida? Talking about that influx that you're seeing currently from our New York visitors.
So I'm going to start this conversation by saying I do not practice tax law. I did extensive research to answer these questions, and this is what I was able to put together, but this is definitely not my forte. So what I was able to find through some research is that the New York average tax rate is 32.33%. So marginal tax is 43.65. For example, in this case, they would be netting out of the $200,000 salary, they would be netting approximately 135,000, about 11,278 per month. And if we take that and we flip it into Florida, our average tax rate is 26.28. So that person is looking at netting 147, 12,287. So you're looking about $1,000 more a month on the $200,000 salary. And again, this is not what I forte and this is not what I practice. So I could be off. I'm hoping my other peers on here can help me out on this one. But I'm pretty sure we all do real estate. So let's see what happens.
Talk to us about the influx that's going on right now. You're talking about especially in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I know it's kind of been like a talk, and we kind of see it around on social media and family and friends. I have a very good friend of mine who's an attorney and a broker up in New York, who in probably the last week has referred me, I would say about 5 to 6 clients, just looking to buy in Miami. Everyone's coming down. From my conversations with them, a lot of it doesn't have to do with the tax. A lot of it is, they've been stuck in their apartments. They're working from home, and why not make the change now? They're pretty much telling me they'll figure it out at some other point, but right now they're trapped in their apartments and they don't want to be. So they're coming down to the sunny South Florida weather, and they will figure out their life thereafter.
You know, this is to all three of you, but with California opening back up, do you all see the influx coming from California slowing down, or do you think that's something that's going to continue with the tax situation as well in terms of real estate here in South Florida and purchases? Jeffrey, we'll start with you.
I think it continues. You probably saw on social media, Sylvester Stallone is selling his $130 million mansion in Beverly Hills and relocating to Florida. You saw Elon Musk moving to Texas, big tech starting to, as we work from home and remotely, allowing a lot of those employees to live and essentially work from other states. So Florida, among other states without state income tax like Texas, I think you're still going to see that flight as people can now realize they can work from home, or companies allow them to work remotely, save on office space costs, and you're able to get a better, maybe not just quality of life, but more bang for your buck with real estate and other more space by relocating to other areas like South Florida or Texas, Arizona, rather than some of the high cost areas in Los Angeles and Silicon Valley.
And our mayor here has been a tremendous spokesperson in really reaching out to these different tech firms and being very active on social media and really drawing them in. Robert, what are you seeing in this regard moving forward?
Yeah, it's, I think there's several factors that are contributing to what South Florida is, what's occurring in South Florida. There's certainly a tax component. The taxes in New York, as Roxana kind of alluded to, were always high. They have state, city, and borough taxes, I recall. And of course, we have no state income tax in Florida, but in the last administration, there was a tax law change where historically residents from states with state income taxes had some ability to offset that state income tax or federal tax, some deduction, which was eliminated. It was purposely eliminated. I think there's a political component to it, but it worked out in South Florida's favor. And also I would say Texas to some degree, because I think Texas is the beneficiary of probably more California in migration than Florida, but we're getting it as well. We're getting it as well from California. I did a major transaction about a month or two ago in Venetian Islands. It was about 20 million on a residential, and there was confidentiality surrounding the buyer. The buyer happened to be a Silicon Valley tech guy, and it was highly confidential. We had the seller in that transaction, and it just hit the papers actually 2 months later. They figured out kind of who it was. I don't want to say, like I said, I didn't sign a confidentiality, but when people that stature are relocating here, and I think you've seen what's happening with New York is always been happening, but it's on steroids right now. And there's always been the tax component, but I think it's being expedited by, as I said, the tax law change. You couple that with COVID, corporate relocations in the finance industry. We all know who some of the big players are that have relocated to South Florida. I think Starbucks is in there. Not Starbucks. Starwood has moved to Miami Beach. Icon Enterprises. I think Blackstone. A lot of them that aren't here are looking here, and on the residential side, that's opened up avenues for high net worth folks that want to live here. And candidly, they're really focused, the ones that we see on Miami-Dade County. And that's really kind of what's happening.
Jeffrey, in terms of your existing client base, are you getting a lot of inquiries about questions moving to South Florida from California?
Not South Florida in particular. Most of our questions are kind of flight questions. What I mean by that is just relocating from California because of our high tax rates and because of the cost of our real estate. So, Robert was saying a lot of it's Texas, a lot of it's Arizona. I do get questions from clients about Florida. And even more so lately, it's driven by, companies like I even have a friend that works for Facebook, and he can now live anywhere he wants. He has to come into the office once every other month. So that's given him the ability to really live anywhere he wants with his family. So they're moving to Arizona because they're able to get more for their money. So I've got clients, not only are they looking to relocate, but also reorganize businesses in other states that are either have no income tax or lower income taxes than California. So not just from real estate, but also from a corporate perspective, as regulations and taxes in California keep going up, we are seeing more clients explore opportunities to reorganize or relocate to other states.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Robert, back over to you, and also Roxana here in South Florida. What percentage mix are you each seeing in terms of clients purchasing here that are already Florida residents versus, New Yorkers, people from California, people coming in from these other high taxed states? Roxana, starting with you.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. In terms of your existing client base right now, what percentage are you seeing, the ratio of it from, current Florida residents that are involved in real estate transactions versus clients that are coming in from other states, highly taxed states, New York, California, et cetera, that are now relocating here and in the midst of transactions?
I would say probably about maybe 15%. And I mean 15% on the safe side, more so. I mean throughout our firm, we have clients who buy here, but it's more of a secondary type of home. So the reason I say 15% is more, that's really the clients that are now actually relocating. It's not a second home. This is more of a permanent change that I have seen come. And again, for me on my end, it's been only New York. I haven't really had people relocating from California, at least not on my end. And it's both residential and commercial, and they're all coming from New York. And it's funny, I drive around and I just see a bunch of New York tags now I never saw before. And I'm like, my goodness, you drive down 95 and it's just New York, New York, New York. So, Rob could have a totally different experience, but on my end, maybe it's just, since it's starting to happen in my firm, it's starting to catch my eye everywhere I go.
Robert, how about on your end?
Yeah, I would say, we probably have a slightly higher percentage of out of state, but particularly New York. I would say in terms of out of state for us, it's almost exclusively New York, California, and that's probably 80% New York, 20% California. But within the firm, the New Yorkers, well, first of all, they're focused primarily on single family houses here because of the COVID, and their people just generally are uncomfortable with the concept of, moving into a high rise with 300 units and going up and down elevators with people they don't know. I think that'll subside as COVID is in the rearview mirror, and there'll be opportunities there. But locally, there was a period where nobody wanted to move in the middle of the pandemic. Now that's changing, and I think some people that are in condos are looking to go to houses, and we've had out of state and out of country, the folks out of the country don't seem to mind the high-rise condos because that's in terms of our clientele that's purchasing in the condo market, typically foreign. They see it as an opportunity because that market's been a little stagnant, but the high end is out of control. It doesn't matter at what price they list them, and we work with some of the top folks, in particularly Miami Beach. They're selling at a rapid pace. And they're cash deals. There's no financing.
Just to interrupt you, when you say the higher price points, what would your definition of that be?
I would say, I'm considering that at maybe 7 million and up. I'm considering that kind of an ultra high-end luxury market. sad to say, $1 million houses are, for middle and upper middle class now.
So the $7 million nut mark, all cash deals, you're seeing it across the board here.
Yes.
Yep.
And they're moving. Those properties are moving. The realtors are selling them, and they're not sitting on the market. This kind of, I would say, the speculative local investor type that likes to buy 300, 200 to maybe $400,000, townhouses and properties and fix and flip or rent out. The inventory of those is starting to dry up. There's a lot of demand for South Florida residential real estate right now. It's very impressive. I've never seen it, except, the 07, 08 bubble, where that was kind of a different thing. These are users, people planning to live here.
Rob, there's actually a question regarding what you just said. I don't know if you saw it, April.
Yeah, I'm going to go to that next. Yeah.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
No.
Don't worry. So we're going to continue from here. So this is actually from Troy Duquette. We'll take the audience question now. Does today differ from the bottom Florida saw leading up to 2008? Roxana, we'll start with you.
From the boom. Oh, April, do you know where I was in 2008?
You have knowledge of it.
I was in law school. I honestly, I don't feel comfortable answering this question. I wasn't practicing real estate. I was living at home with my parents in law school in 2008. So I'm gonna let someone else take this one on.
Fair enough. Back down to the industry veteran, Robert.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The boom that preceded 2008 compared to now, it just feels different. Prices, I think, are elevated, but it feels it's real because that was a lot of investor money. Cab driver that owned 5 houses in South Florida. These are people that are made a decision to relocate to South Florida because let's face, not that I'm a homer because I love New York too, but we have seemingly everything that they have. The cultural scene here is better. I would argue the nightlife in Miami exceeds that of New York. I think there's just a lot going for us. And now the restaurants are here, everything that they have in New York, less some of the congestion and overpopulation, but we're going to get there too, but we're a little spread out, but yeah, that's the way I see it.
Thank you, Robert. Jeffrey, over to you. Thinking back to the 2008 market, your observations of the state of Florida, California, what are your thoughts there?
Again, I agree with Robert. 2008 was kind of driven by the unfettered giving of mortgages to people that couldn't qualify for those. So you get the cab driver with 5 mortgages. Today, you've got mortgages 30-year fixed for a single family residence in the mid-2s for qualified buyers. And that alone is giving buyers more buying power. Besides some of the flight in California, those that choose to stay here or work here, we are seeing kind of unprecedented competition for single family homes, not driven just by low interest rates, but by the fact that people are working from home. So maybe the adults or the parents need space for an office or multiple offices. California has essentially been closed on and off since March. So kids have been going to school through Zoom. So now there's the extra space, or basically a study from home or school from home. So people are moving from apartments and condos, upgrading to more space, and also wanting more land, for that backyard because playgrounds are being closed. So you're getting offers, not just the high end, but the low end, houses below $1 million. Represent, I hate to call that low end, but in Los Angeles, that's what things cost. You're getting homes with 40 different offers. from all cash and significantly over asking for people that are wanting to buy those homes. But you don't necessarily see it as a bubble because people are they're better qualified because they're able to save so much money on the interest rates. It's just more people are now taking that plunge to buy that real estate, or they've been saving and living at home, and now they are ready to take that plunge. And in the Southern California market, at least, you don't see that really stopping at any time. I think there'll be a gradual tick back as more people are comfortable selling. There's been some hesitancy with letting buyers kind of come through your home during the peak of COVID, and maybe waiting to put that house on the market. So as a little more inventory comes, you might see that die down. But I think the prices in Southern California, and probably likely in South Florida, are just going to continue to rise as people want to live in those cities, especially if you're okay paying kind of the tax rates in California. You're not going to see really an entire flight. Some people may leave, but those that stay are going to continue to buy those homes.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Let's talk a little bit about timing. How long do you foresee, which you touched on a little bit in your answer, how long do you foresee this going on, this rush and this influx into purchases and the sales of the homes? What are your predictions there?
Who are you asking?
I'm going to start back with you.
Oh, terrific. I don't see it going away anytime soon. Interest rates they don't have anywhere else to really go but up. But I think it's going to take some time for them to really go up to historic levels. And now they're at historic lows. So until that really starts happening, you're still going to get this real drive in Southern California and other states like it, for people wanting those spaces. And especially right now we're in COVID, but until this really ends, and we see hopefully sooner than later, but when people start to go back to work to determine, hey, is my company going to let me continue to work from home and work remotely, or am I going to have to go back to work? Until people know that, they may still be undecided whether they're going to be able to move out of state or they're going to have to stay close. So, probably well into 2022, you're still going to see this as companies go back and make that final determination whether my workers have to come back or they're able to potentially relocate. And if they do, you're still going to see these housing prices continue to stay steady and increase.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Roxana, anything you'd like to add there?
No, I agree. I think that the question of the predictability of this market right now is very up in the air, and it's very difficult for people for anyone to sit here and tell you, what usually, you see a trend. That's how the markets are predicted, and we haven't been in this long enough to really see a new trend happening. But I agree with Jeffrey, and I don't think this is going to go away soon. I definitely think it's going to bleed into 2022. And I agree with everything he said. We're seeing it here in South Florida. I mean, the interest rates are increasingly low. We maybe saw a slight increase, which stabilized again. So it's just, things just aren't moving right now. And the housing market continues to climb. Like Rob said, I mean, people are literally outbidding each other in cash deals. It's insane to watch. I mean, it's fun to be a part of, but it's definitely, it's a wild market.
Thank you, Roxana. Robert, industry veteran, what are your thoughts?
Excuse me? Say again?
I said, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're a tremendous industry veteran here.
Oh, in terms of this, on this same topic, I'd echo what's been said. I think I would say that I think South Florida, I think this real estate kind of market and this in-migration to South Florida is going to continue for a while because of the tax structure. I think that's really it. Considering people can be more mobile, why not work in a place that doesn't A, have a state income tax, and B, has the climate that everybody wants? New York is historically came here to vacation. Now they're realizing, hey, why can't I just live there? It's nicer. It's not as congested relative to New York, although we think we're congested. We've got, like I said, we have everything that they want and everything that they need. And so I think that is here to stay. Now, I think that's going to impact the business community in some ways, because the Miami way of doing business is slightly different. It's substantially different, I would say, than what you have in New York. I would say Roxana and I, for instance, by pure coincidence, we had a transaction a couple months ago. It was a significant commercial transaction. And in fact, that we're collegial, we knew each other. You could see from our personalities, we're lovers, not fighters. We don't, we're in the we're transactional lawyers. We're compensated to make deals happen and not to show how smart we are and spend every last billable hour. And we're able to solve things because of a mutuality of, we're here, we're in the local market, we understand, we're trying to make the deals happen. The New York, it's a much rougher, less trusting kind of way of doing business. I'm not saying it's wrong, but the clients we deal with, sometimes we have to condition them that, don't worry about that. That might be something you have to worry about in New York. You don't have to worry about it here, kind of a thing. So, but I think the community, the business community, there will be an adjustment there, because I think all these folks are looking to come here and do business.
Staying on these lines, Robert, I'm going to direct this back over to you. This is another audience question. Is the national foreclosure moratorium limiting supply and pushing up prices?
Is it limiting supply? It's limiting it, I think, mildly. I mean, I think the people that were, I think, have been hardest hit would be the people, obviously, your renters that are the renters in apartment buildings, and like the maybe the lower tier of the residential market. Yeah, I guess it's all relative. Limiting supply to what? Those people that get foreclosed would presumably go to an apartment building. People that could trade up, maybe if there's house availability. Yeah, but I don't see a foreclosure onslaught. I think a lot of the banks have understood. They've worked out a lot of deals, but it's a good question. Maybe Jeffrey has or Roxana has thoughts on that.
Let's go to Jeffrey.
I don't see a limiting supply as much as speaking to brokers, in my area, is there's less inventory because certain age brackets or certain people are more scared to list homes, not wanting to have people walk through them. So there are just less homes coming to the market. Conversely, with apartments, in evictions, that may be more likely to, they'll get an onslaught of evictions with people paying rent or unable to pay rent, more so than actual foreclosures. People not being able to mortgages, because banks are more willing to work out deals with mortgagors versus renters and landlords, and the renters just may not have something. They may be out of work and unable to work out deals with landlords. So those will lead to more, evictions. But I think the question is, it's more driven by just people waiting to get vaccinated or waiting till COVID goes away to actually list those homes and increase supply.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Roxana?
I agree with both Rob and Jeffrey. I at least here in Miami, the moratorium for evictions has lifted. They have started processing them, and I've reached final orders already at this point, mostly on the commercial side. But I think that on the eviction end, at least from what I've seen in my experience personally, I think a lot of people kind of took advantage of the fact that they thought they didn't have to pay rent. I had multiple people call and just ask like, hey, I don't have to pay rent anymore, right? And it's like, no, you do. I can't, you can't be evicted at this time, but you owe rent and it's going to snowball. And at some point the courts will open, and for the most part, if they stop paying it, they were using it for something else. When it comes to foreclosure, I agree with both of my peers on here today. I don't think the demand, I don't think it's capping a supply at all. I think that if we see any kind of effect on the foreclosure end, it's going to be years from now. And maybe more on the hard money investor side, but definitely not your banks.
Thank you, Roxana.
You're welcome.
Staying with you, what do you foresee happening ahead with property taxes? Are they going up? Are they going down? Are they going to stay the same moving through into 2022?
So I took the liberty of even calling the property tax office to see if they have any plans. There's no changes. There's no legislative changes, at least not here in Florida. Taxes go up in increments, and there's no, they have absolutely no kind of forgiveness in their plans at this time. There's payment plans that you can sign up for, but your payments are still due. They did extend it at one point through April. But from my understanding, that's not going to get carried through. So I think at least in Florida, we're staying the same.
Thank you, Roxana. Robert, in terms of your client base, is this something you're getting a lot of questions about? Property tax questions?
We get property tax questions from out-of-staters or out-of-country foreign nationals that just want to understand how it works. Property taxes here are deemed a little higher, but because we don't have a state income tax, the state largely is funded by property tax and sales tax. And to Roxana's point, I think the property taxes on new purchases probably are going up because the way property taxes are calculated here, when somebody purchases a new property, there's no recitation of the purchase price, but there are documentary stamps that are reflected on there. Property appraiser can deduce the purchase price from the doc stamps, and that's what triggers a reassessment of the property. So somebody buys a property for $10 million, the property appraiser knows it. If it had been on the books at 8 million before, they're going to reassess it up. So, but then in terms of whether the actual tax that the homeowner pays goes up or down depends on where the property is physically located. What jurisdiction is it? City of Miami Beach? Is it Village of Bal Harbor? Is it Miami Lakes? Is it, because each municipality then sets their own millage rate. So it's a little bit, as Roxanne said, a little bit of a complicated system, but there is a preference and advantage for people who live and reside here, are Florida domiciliaries, and it's called homestead. You get their homestead exemption, and it caps the property assessment for the house cannot go up more than 3% per year for homesteaded properties, whereas for non-homesteaded properties, it's 10% a year. So you could see the advantage of why a New Yorker wants to come down and actually not only live here, re-domicile here, and that's a whole nother topic. But because we have developed a small practice in re-domiciling New Yorkers to Florida, because Florida is very welcoming if you want to become a Florida domiciliary resident of Florida, but New York is very aggressive in taxing those people, or attempting to tax those people, because historically New Yorkers moved here when they had a liquidity event. They were getting ready to make a bunch of money. They realized, I got to get out of New York, I got to come to Florida. And so that was always happening. Now with people moving because of the tax law change and these other changes that we talked about, New York is just there, as I understand it, anybody where they're losing $100,000 in tax revenue from somebody, it's triggering an automatic audit of those people. And they look for any tie that you have to New York. If you have a housekeeper in New York, they're going to use that as evidence that you should be paying New York taxes.
Jeff, sorry if you don't mind. And on top of, before Jeff comes in, since he's from California, in Florida, we also can transfer our homestead tax. So that's really nice too. And I think a lot of people are taking advantage of that in this hot market.
Right, what Roxanne's talking about, the portability.
Right.
And there are other ways to attempt to keep your property tax low. There's certain exemptions for widows or active military or disabled and things like that. But Roxana said the portability, somebody relocating from one house to another house can port over their assessment from the old house to the new house as a way to keep the taxes lower. And the homestead exemption in Florida comes with a $50,000 kind of exemption. So if let's say you buy a house for $1 million and you get homestead exemption on it because you qualify, they tax it as though it's $950,000.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Roxana. Jeffrey, talking about the California market, because a lot of people are moving to South Florida with the tax situation overall there in the state. What do you foresee ahead for California?
Right now, we had a proposition called Proposition 19 pass, and it's similar in California to what Roxana and Robert were talking about, where you own a home, you pass away, you were able to leave that to your children, and your children would inherit your tax basis. So if you bought a property in 1970 and you're paying $5,000 in taxes because the home is assessed at $500,000, where today it's 10 million. And that taxes would go up tenfold. What Proposition 19 did out here was they eliminated that exception because so many properties were being passed down from generation to generation, and they were keeping these artificially low tax bases. So that goes into effect in the middle of February. So my phone, as well as colleagues, have been ringing off the hook with people that want to do estate planning to try to transfer properties before Prop 19 goes into effect and they lose this tax basis. What that's going to trigger was, once it's in effect, is children aren't going to be able to have this low tax base. It's going to trigger more selling of real estate here. And maybe, that child that could have lived in the house with this low tax base now all of a sudden can't afford it, sells the home, and likely moves out of state, possibly somewhere like South Florida, where they're able to get, not necessarily cheaper real estate, but more variety, and potentially buy more because they're saving on the state income tax. So we're doing a lot of planning in that sense. We are also pretty lucky in the sense we had a proposition, Prop 15, that tried to overrule Proposition 13. I know a lot of propositions, but Prop 13 basically said your tax base stays the same. It can go up a certain percentage every year, but it's not reassessed at fair market value. So you have so much real estate here that was bought even decades ago or generations ago, and they're keeping these low tax bases. And what that would have done is that everything's reassessed at fair market value, which would have just created havoc, not only in residential, but commercial real estate. And people that have owned their homes for years, especially older generations, potentially couldn't have afforded their own home anymore if your tax basis is increasing so dramatically. Thankfully, that one did not pass, but it is something that we're always concerned about in the future, just given the high price of real estate, especially in Southern California, and paying taxes on that portion. Because unlike South Florida, we in California do have to pay state income tax, and we are one of the highest in the country.
Wow, very interesting.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Roxana, this was something that you touched on a little bit earlier, talking about the pushing of the deadlines for property taxes in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Do you all foresee that happening again in 2021? And do you think that's a good thing? Why or why not?
I don't foresee it happening. We're talking about property taxes, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't foresee them extending it again. I honestly don't. I don't see why. I don't see a negative to it. I mean, at the end of the day, the taxes still have to get paid. The only thing being extended is the deadline. And this year they when they extended it, they only went from March 31st to April 15th. So it's really not a big difference. But I'm sure those 2 weeks helped somebody. I don't see the negative aspect to it, but I don't think that it will pass again.
Robert, thoughts there?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Although, no, I don't think so. I agree. I don't think it's gonna change this particular year. I don't think so.
Thank you. Jeffrey, do you concur?
And if we're talking about federal, I mean, you're talking about property tax, you're talking about,
Property taxes.
yeah, it's property taxes. I don't see any change forthcoming to the deadlines.
Thank you. Jeffrey, same thoughts?
I mean, California, we didn't have that exception, so I don't know about Florida, but we're still getting restrictions here, but we're behind. Our eviction moratorium just got extended through September, so we're a lot more restrictive. But we never got any type of property tax deferment or abatement, but we've got other type of consumer protections. Those are starting to die down. Our stay-at-home order just lifted on Monday. We were closed, we were open, now we were closed, and we finally opened again. And I think the restrictions here are gonna start slowing down, and we're probably one of the most conservative in the country, since especially LA County was kind of the new epicenter. So as we start to see less restrictions, I think that probably is reflected throughout the country, and we're probably the last to see the restrictions lift. So.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Talking about the current climate right now with the market, what's your biggest roadblock right now in terms of transactions?
Who's going first?
Jeffrey.
I think it's more, a lot of it has been fear driven, especially back in March when COVID started. People were unsure of how their business was going to fare, how their cash flow is going to look. You got a lot of businesses taking PPP proceeds, whether those are being repaid or forgiven. Now in 2021, we're seeing a lot of that started to lift. We're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions type work, companies buying and selling. We're seeing a lot of new development deals start to come to fruition. Capital markets in California opening up a little bit more. So I think the biggest roadblock is just hopefully getting this vaccine out to everyone to make sure that there's no more hiccups in our economic recovery. And if it keeps going as it is or better, that 2021 could be a banner year for real estate out here. So biggest roadblock is just making sure that we don't have another spike in this pandemic, because that's what's led to a really rough 2020 in California real estate.
Here, Jeffrey. Roxana, over to you along those lines, but in a transactional basis here in South Florida.
I think the biggest roadblocks that we've had are I don't think everyone, and I mean everyone, like municipalities and different companies that we depend on to get to the end of a transaction, we're ready to go work at home or to go cloud. So there's times where an example, you order a lien search and the municipality, somebody had COVID last week, they weren't ready to go work from home and they've shut down for 2 weeks and there's just no way to get this lien search back. You see delays in, there's people who don't want you in their homes. There's people who don't want you in their yards. We need to get surveys. We need to coordinate. That's where I've seen the biggest lag is trying to get back all the information that we need in order to properly transfer title for a closing. I think a lot of municipalities and companies have now stepped up their game and are starting to jump on board, and I see it picking up. But when this first happened, there was a big lag, and people were, like, hey, where's this? Where's that? And I'm like, no one's answering. There's literally times where nobody would pick up for a day or 2 or 3, and I couldn't get responses back to clients. But I do see that that's starting to shift, and I think it will maintain cloud-based and people working from home.
Thank you, Roxana. Robert, transactional roadblocks, the biggest one that you're seeing.
Yeah, I think Roxana is exactly right. Particularly when at the beginning of the pandemic, it was a little chaotic because you didn't know who was going to be able to deliver. And we're as real estate transactional, real estate corporate, we're very dependent upon third-party vendors and reports, everything from appraisers to surveyors to lenders to municipal lien search reports. So the list goes on and on and on. And if there's a cog in a roadblock in any one of those vendors, it could slow and derail a whole transaction, and parties get bent out. It's really beyond everybody's control. And it's really beyond everybody's control. And so that's really it. But I think it's getting much better. There's the occasional unforeseen delay, but I think municipalities have been among the slowest, because they do have more people that are seemingly working remotely, and that just naturally, depending upon what it is that we need them to provide, can slow the process. Lenders, I think the lenders, which really at the end of the day drive a lot of transactions, have been hit and miss, but getting much better. They're getting much better.
Thank you, Robert. Staying on you. What's the one question that you get the most from out-of-town clients looking to move to South Florida? Number one question.
Most of the questions I get relate to redomiciling from out of state to in-state, because the Floridians, they know what they know, but it's, a New Yorker trying to relocate. There's a lot of those questions. How do I become a Florida resident? And how do I, and so we kind of walk them through. And again, to reiterate what I said before, Florida usually is not the issue. We've developed a kind of a laundry list of about 8, just so everybody knows, Florida does not have that 50% and a day rule. In other words, you don't have to live here, one day more than half of the year to be deemed a Florida resident. Florida, your residency in Florida is a byproduct of your intent, and the intent they deduce from a variety of subjective factors. Your driver's license, you have a Florida driver's license, vehicle registration, voter registration. Does your estate planning, reference Florida as the situs of your estate? On and on and on like that. Do you own a home here? Do you rent? You file what's called a declaration of domicile. You can record. There's a lot of things, but again, Florida is not the issue. There's no state income tax here for anybody to be really worried about. It's the New Yorker severing ties, and I've learned a lot about it from having to deal with New York lawyers and CPAs that have to fight all of these audits from the Department of Revenue in New York, and they're brutal. And you understand it. They have somebody that they're counting on that revenue. They got 10 million people in New York, a lot of needs, a lot of historical expenses that maybe some newer places don't have. And it's a little bit of a rub. It's a problem. It's a problem for them. And we're the beneficiary, fortunately. So fortunately, we're the beneficiary.
Thank you, Robert. Jeffrey, over to you. In terms of if we have client questions about moving to the state of Florida, moving from California to South Florida, what's the top question that you get?
Usually it's kind of similar to Robert. What's the process? If I move, how long do I have to, live in the state of Florida versus California or another state? Can I be there a portion of my time? My business is in California, but I'd like to relocate for my family or a vacation home. Is it possible to switch my domicile to lower my taxes? And it's usually kind of based on those questions. And if client decides to make the move, then it's trying to set them up with local advisors and professionals to help them find the real estate, document the transactions, if they decide to, like I said, make a move out of state.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Roxana, over to you.
I agree with both of you guys. I definitely think that that's probably the number one question. So I'm gonna go to question number two, kind of mix it up a little. I think a lot of people from out of state also ask about like the COVID restrictions, how strict they are. I mean, it ends up becoming, a real, for example, I have a client buying an apartment, are you guys, if it's open, can you just go down to the parks? Are the parks open? I'm coming down with my kid. Are the restaurants open? Movie theaters, questions more about just living day to day, which I think that they have been widely restricted in other states.
Thank you, Roxana.
I would add one thing to my prior answer. The other question I get a lot is, how do I take title? What do you recommend? How do I take title to whatever property that I'm purchasing? It depends on if it's commercial or residential. It's residential in their individual name. If they want to have homestead, pursue homestead exemption, possibly a revocable trust, because state plan, probate here in South Florida is a nightmare, and so we end up doing a lot of estate planning tangential to the purchase, because somebody's purchasing a $5 or $10 million house. It's a significant purchase, and they want to make sure it's titled appropriately.
That's a good one.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robert. So we're coming to the close of the hour. I want to go around to each one of you, starting with you, Jeffrey. What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you if they want to work together with you?
Check out my website. It's www.gibbsgating.com. It has my email, contact information, also on LinkedIn and social media. Always happy to just answer questions, provide advice.
Thank you so much. Roxana, over to you.
The same. You can find me on my website. It's tejedalawgroup.com. It has all our contact information on there. My paralegal is Elena. She's the one who calendars all my consultations. So you can reach us at the office, or there's also an email on there in order for you to reach us. Thank you so much, Roxana. And Robert.
Yes, I would say the same. We have the website, eliaslaw.net. We're available by phone, 305-823-2300, via email, which is all on the web. And we have social media. There's a company that manages it for us, but I think we have a Facebook page and a LinkedIn, and we're accessible, very accessible.
Thank you so much.
And we appreciate Haute Living providing the forum for this, because I think it's these topics are much discussed, as you can imagine, out in public now. And I think this has been a great forum. We on behalf of Roxanne and Jeffrey, we really appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion with some of your readers and viewers and your audience. And we welcome you to South Florida for those of you who are on your way. We know you're here, April, so.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to each one of you. So we're actually going to have the video from this up on Haute TV over on YouTube. So you'll be able to watch it there. This will be feeding to Google News, and we've been streaming live on the Haute Living Facebook, and it'll be over on the Haute Lawyer Facebook as well.
Thank you,
So
April.
thank you all for your insight and your partnership, and wishing you all to continue to stay healthy and safe, and to your teams and to your families.
Thank you.
Great,
so
thank
much.
you.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Bye-bye.